What is going on there, YouTube? It is I, Micah, back here with a episode of the Mighty Micah Mouse Show. Um, so on this episode today, first off, if you're watching this today, then you are watching it on the 62nd anniversary of Disneyland. That's right, July 17th, 1955. Disneyland opened, and most people know, but to be honest, it was probably one of the worst openings ever. But because of Walt and his direction and his vision, Disneyland succeeded ultimately, as we all know. And of course, now it's probably one of the best amusement parks in the world as far as innovation and popularity. So thank you, Walt. Thank you, Disney, for your inspiration throughout the years. I, of course, am a huge fan of both you personally and your company. So thank you. We miss you. Anyways, so moving on, today's topic is kind of a cool one I just saw, and it's, I realize it's not Halloween, but we are actually going to talk about some of the spookiest ghost rumors from the park at Disneyland. So again, some of you might know some of these, and you might not know some of these. So again, they're sort of rumors said to haunt the park. Obviously, Disney and Disneyland has not come out and confirmed any of this, but that's just the way it is. All right, so number one is kind of the obvious one. It's the ghost of Walt Disney in the apartment above the firehouse. So most people know this by now, but basically above the firehouse at Disneyland, Walt put an office, and he actually kind of put like an apartment, almost like a studio, basically, and so he would have a place to stay if he was working late at the park, and so he didn't have to drive all the way home. But also just to remind the cast members and eventually the guests that Walt is there, that he's in the park, that he's watching over them, that he's taking, because he cares about this. This is like his child. So, a lot of people say that, whenever the light was on, Walt was in. Now, basically, when Walt passed away in 1966, the apartment was just sort of left. Some say it was, I've heard stories of it being used for like storage and stuff. I don't think that that's the truth, but anyways, but they were still cleaning it. It was still sort of, I think Roy didn't really know what to do with it, and so it was just sort of there. And the story is that an employee was cleaning the apartments, and she turned off the lamp as she left. Most people do that. When you leave a room, you turn off the light. That's, She then reportedly heard a voice say, "I'm still here," and the light has obviously stayed on ever since. Now, a couple years ago, I want to say in 2005, when they had the 50th, they basically replaced it and put in a full-time, so that light is always on. And I don't know if it might be solar powered or whatever at this point, but basically it's just, they kind of ran with it, the company, and they decided that, we're going to leave it on all the time, and just, that way. Moving on to number two, a lot of people really liked the People Mover. Now, when the People Mover debuted in 1967, obviously the idea came from the 1964 World's Fair that Disney was hugely a part of. But in 1967, when it opened, about a month or so, a 17-year-old boy tried to jump from one People Mover car to another, but he missed and fell onto the track. Fortunately, he was crushed under the oncoming train. Now, when it closed down in 1995, they replaced it with rocket rods. That wasn't very good. So basically now it's just vacant. So if you're ever walking through Tomorrowland at Disneyland, basically what looks like a walkway above you that splits the right and the left side of Tomorrowland, that's where the People Mover was. So, like I said, it closed down in 1955, but people have still reportedly seen the ghost of the boy in and around Tomorrowland, and supposedly he sort of goes after young blonde women. I don't know what that's about, but supposedly multiple sources have said that they felt someone pulling on their hair. Again, I don't know. This is all just, basic rumors at this point. Number 3, in 1973, Tom Sawyer. So 1973, two brothers decided to hide out in Tom Sawyer and try to stay after dark, after the park closed. Basically, Tom Sawyer obviously is an island, so you have to take a boat to get across the rivers of America. Now, the two brothers tried to swim across the man-made river, separating the attraction from the main part of Frontierland. The older of the two brothers drowned, and multiple Disneyland employees throughout the years have said they've seen a ghost of a man floating in the river. Now, I haven't seen it, and I don't know how much credibility this is, but these are actually true stories, in the sense of, the 17-year-old boy in 1967 and the 1973 the two brothers. These people actually did die, so it's not just random people. However, number 4 might be just a random rumor. So number 4 is a ghostly woman dressed in all white 1800 styles clothing on the edge of Main Street, is supposedly reported to help children after the park, after it gets dark, as it does at night, help children who get lost back to the sort of child daycare on Main Street. That's not a park employee. Supposedly, the story goes that she died in the late 1800s to early 1900s on the spot where Main Street now stands, which, when Walt bought it in 1954, was all orange groves. So I don't know. It could be, it could not be, but if you see that, I would just say don't freak out. Obviously you probably don't want to scare whatever it is, right? Now, you might be surprised that 4 of these so far have not taken place in the Haunted Mansion. And we're about to actually get into Haunted Mansion. So there's actually 2 of them. Now, it is believed partially that by a small group of people that the Haunted Mansion is actually haunted, for real. There was a small plane crash in 1940s in Anaheim, California, just a few miles away from Disneyland. Now, supposedly, the ghost of the pilot, who walks with a cane, walks with a cane, has found his way over to the happiest place on Earth, and he wanders around the entrance of the Haunted Mansion ride, where guests get into the attractions of dune buggies. Again, I haven't seen it. If you asked a cast member, they probably wouldn't say anything about it. But if you do see it, awesome. But again, just, don't be an idiot and don't start anything, right? Don't call them out on their stuff. But the second one actually is also a warning. So the second one is near the exit of the Haunted Mansion. Supposedly there's a spirit of a little boy said to be the ghost of a dead child whose mother scattered the ashes on the ride because it was his favorite ride. Now, first of all, I don't know how you would get into the park nowadays with ashes of someone, with the security check that they do, which is, last time I went about a year and a half ago, is 2 security checks. They might have upped it to 3 by now. I don't know. I haven't been a while. But first off, if you can do that, I don't know how. Second of all, Disney has come out multiple times saying that don't do this. Don't spread ashes of loved ones, pets, or whatever anywhere in the park, let alone the Haunted Mansion. Because the custodial staff that comes in after dark basically just vacuums it up. So ultimately your loved one's ashes are basically just going into the Orange County dump. So probably not a good idea. But again, if you see it, don't do anything. All right, number 7. So in 1984, a young woman named Dolly Young was riding the Matterhorn without her seatbelt on. There's a reason that they tell you to wear a seatbelt on those rides, folks. Always wear them. Anyways, she got thrown from her toboggan seat and unfortunately was killed by an oncoming sled. Now, sometimes when employees are doing their closing walkthroughs and, making sure that everything's, still there, they, multiple reports of them feeling really cold, like a cold air suddenly, or being watched. Some have even said that they've heard a spooky female voice, and many think that that's Dolly's voice. Now, this one's kind of a really sad one. In number 8, every June, so if you grew up in the LA area or Orange County area, you probably went to grad night at Disneyland. A lot of people do it, and it's sort of become this thing throughout the years. Now, in 1966, a teenager snuck into the park by climbing a fence. If you know anything about the monorail and Tomorrowland, it's basically right on the edge of the park and harbor. So basically you climb that fence and you're in the park. Now, when he climbed over the fence, he came in atop the monorail track and was spotted by a security guard. When he ran for it, he was hit by the monorail and ultimately died. His ghost can still reportedly be seen at night running along the track next to the monorail. Again, I've never seen it, but supposedly there are multiple reports. So all of these were guests so far. And actually this next one is a guest too, but we do have one employee on the list. So number 9 is Space Mountain. Supposedly there's a guest known as Mr. One Way. A redheaded guest will wait in line with people and get on to Space Mountain next to a single rider. However, whenever they arrive back at the station, he is gone. So somewhere in the ride, he disappears. Hint Mr. One Way. Now, there's another one, supposedly a park employee. So this one starts to sort of get into the realm of being an employee. So supposedly a ghost of a park employee who died at work. She wears an eerie green color, and her nickname is Disco Debbie. Now, that one seems kind of cheesy, in my opinion, but it is supposedly multiple people have seen it. Now, for the official, park employee one, closing out the list at number 10, America Sings is an attraction in Tomorrowland that tells the story of America via singing animatronics. Basically, back in the day, in the 60s and the early 70s, and really, I believe, into the 80s, too. So basically, it's where Innovations Innovations is in Tomorrowland next to, now it's Star Wars. But basically where Innovations was, between the monorail and Space Mountain, basically right there, that big circle building. But anyways, basically it would rotate around, the stage would rotate around the seats would rotate around the stage. So just a couple weeks after it opened in 1974, an 18-year-old ride operator was crushed to death when she became trapped between a rotating portion of the set and the stationary one. So that's only, basically she was on the wrong wall. And so multiple employees who have worked the ride right afterwards said that they occasionally heard a dismembered voice warning them to be careful. So again, these are all just mostly rumors. Disney and Disneyland has not come out and said that any of these are real. But that's basically the show for today. So hopefully I didn't spook you out too much. Stay tuned for more episodes. And like, comment, and subscribe in the below. Let me know what you guys want us to talk about. That's it for this episode of the Mighty Micah Mouse Show. I, of course, am Micah, signing off. And folks, remember, stay safe.